Another movie review, and we're still in 1961. This one is called The Outsider. It's directed by Delbert Mann, based on the real life story of Irma Hamilton Hayes. He was a Native American Pima Indian, which was part of the Apache tribe. This was, as I say, directed by Delbert Mann, screenplay by Stuart Stern, based on the hero of Iwo Jima by William Bradford. Hui. Cinematography by Joseph Lachelle, and to the cast. In the lead role, Tony Curtis played Ira Hayes. James Franciscus played Private Jim Sorensen. Gregory Walcott was Sergeant Keeley. Bruce Bennett plays Major General Bridges. Vivian Nathan is Nancy Hayes, the mother of Ira. Edmund Hayesham is Morago. And there's a number of other significant individuals in this movie, which is, of course, a war movie. And there will be a slide for you to peruse at your leisure to check out all these sundry supporting cast. It's a story about Hayes, who became famous after being photographed lifting the American flag at Iwo Jima in World War II, at the end of World War II in 1945. It was a Pulitzer Prize-winning photograph by Joe Rosenthal. 6 US Marines raising the American flag on Mount Suribati on Iwo Jima, taken on the February the 23rd, 1945, 5 days after the Marines landed on the island. And Hayes became a national hero and celebrity. And the movie starts off on the Pima Indian Reservation in Arizona, where Hayes was brought up. We get a picture of a young man, very naive about life outside the reservation, unaware of what war and world events are. He's lived a very protective life, and basically a life that's been connected to religious beliefs, which are held strongly by his mother, and passed down to Ira. Conscription follows, of course, and he has to cope with the outside world. Early images of him at boot camp show his naivety. Also a rather unathletic, failing individual, miserably in these early exercises as part of the training program. This also brings to the fore the first instance of racism towards him as a Pima Indian. But he overcomes these shortcomings and his self-confidence starts to grow. But just prior to the departure to the South Pacific, he has some free time and shows his vulnerability again when out on the town, where all his friends are living it up, getting plastered, mixing with assorted women. Whereas Hayes is rather reluctant to mix and join in. He has never had an alcoholic drink and is unable really to socially mix with the opposite sex. And so he removes himself from the situation, but later this memory is seen as significant. Hayes is returned home to Washington and paraded amongst the other heroes who are in the picture raising the flag. Hayes is transformed into a war hero and all the baggage that carries. He has to sell it to the American people about valor, about the bravery, and of course the hypocrisy with the razzmatazz. This gets to Hayes, who can't really handle it. He feels a bit of a hypocrite, and we watch numerous events where he escapes via the use of alcohol and gets into difficulties and eventually upsets the military hierarchy. He isn't behaving as the advertisement for the Navy desires, vis-a-vis his heroic escapades on Iwo Jima. A path towards self-destruction is viewed. And I was very impressed by the performance by Curtis. Initially, he presents as a very unconfident individual, very naive, caught up in religion, etc. A pure, morally clean native Indian. And then post-war, he falls apart. He's indulgent in alcohol to escape the fact that he's been disloyal to his tribe, to his country. The image that they want him to present conflicts with his inability to get to grips with his own feelings and his inner strength. It's a very sad movie, really, and it slides towards an inevitable conclusion. The war movie that it's supposed to represent lacked quite the action sequences that would go with that label. It was more about how the war experience affected the men's psychological condition, particularly Hayes. A look at post-traumatic stress disorder, the horror of war, PTSD, and the military portrayed as owners of you, both in the wartime and afterwards. Hayes is paraded like a puppet to be celebrated by the population for the great US victory. But what of the price paid by the loss of life and the trauma experienced by the survivors? So I'd suggest you check it out. The Outsider of 1961, 5-star performance from Tony Curtis.